Hi, everyone. I am so excited. We have our best guest. I don't even have to be careful about how I say that or what I say, and she will be mortified that I'm saying this. But just literally the best guest that I've ever had on this show, the one that's brought more listeners to this channel and even the network, Mental Health News Radio Network, has been Kristin Louie de Canonville. Kristin is here with us today. She has a new book, Ghost in the Machine. We're going to get into it intensely. And she's a psychotherapist in Ireland. We won't give your address. We don't need people knocking on your door. But she has done so much in the around the field of psychological abuse, also known as narcissistic abuse, but also around writing about this, working with patients, working with companies when they have this kind of thing happen in their organization. So please welcome the incredible Kristin Louie de Canonville to the show. Hi, Kristin.
Hi, Kristin. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Getting her on camera, listeners, was
This is the first ever.
yeah, and you know, it's important because right now we need so much help with what's going on in the world and
Uh-huh.
what's going and how that's playing out in our personal lives, especially with this particular topic, that I think it's important that people see where all this wisdom is coming from. It just kind of makes you feel um, you can attach the thankfulness to Kristin when you get to see her while she's talking about this subject that has been her life's work. So, Kristin, thank you for agreeing to do this.
You're very welcome. It's growth promoting for me as well. It's taken a lot for me to come on camera, but I'm very happy to be here and speak to all of your listeners.
Because we've evolved. We don't care about makeup and lighting is important, yes, but more so you can just see us. But all the other stuff, the trappings that come with being a female, we're going to leave that aside because what's important here is the information. So, Kristin, can you explain to everyone, just give a brief history of the other books that you've written, the titles of them, and how you came to this book?
Okay, so I've written four books. The first one was The Three Faces of Evil, where I looked at the different levels of narcissism, because each level that is higher, it's much more damaging. The second book was called When Shame Begets Shame. And that was really around how narcissists are very shame-based themselves and they project their shame onto their victims. And so they carry the shame. And the third book was The Gaslighting Syndrome. So I went in as deep as I could there around gaslighting in the home, in the workplace, etc. And now to my new book is called The Ghost in the Machine. And we're going to take that metaphor really comes from, I heard about that metaphor about 35 years ago when I was studying philosophy at college. But I wanted, for some reason or other, that title came to me out of the blue, out of nowhere.
You think it was a download?
A spiritual download, yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it from not a philosophical approach, but from a psychological approach. So this is what it's about. So the ghost in the machine metaphor, what does it even mean? Well, basically, let's put it simply. The original, that wasn't, I didn't coin this term. Originally, the consensus was that mind and body were separate. And Ryle, the guy who came up with this topic, he said, no, that's not so. Mind and body are very much connected and interrelated. So what we think makes us behave in a particular way. So if I love you and I'm happy with you, my behavior towards you is going to be loving and affectionate. But for the narcissist, this body and mind is disconnected. In healthy relationships, both partners, mind and body, the ghost in the machine, as it were, are connected. And so they can relate in a natural way. But when we become disconnected, we can't get close. And that's what happens in relationship with narcissists. In the beginning, they start to be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. You think you've met your soulmate. They seem to get you quickly. They understand you. But the narcissist is very, very good at doing that. It's not actually genuine. They're mirroring you back to yourself, and you think that they're the same as you. But eventually, the victim begins to realize that something isn't quite right. They're feeling the disconnect, but they don't know what that is. And so that's when actually it becomes a very sad story for the victim.
That's when it starts to, that's to me, that's when you've been given your love heroin, and now we're going to start taking it away
Yes,
so that
because
so you become
yes,
addicted.
you're right. So in the beginning, in the first phase, they're being idealizing you. They put you up on a pedestal. You're wonderful. You can do nothing wrong. But when you go into the next stage, which is devaluing you, it's only a matter of time and that'll happen because you'll disappoint them at some level. We do. We disappoint each other all the time. And when you disappoint them, all of a sudden, now they also know when they have you hooked. They know when you are actually like their drug. They know. And that's when they will shift then into devaluing. And that's when really you can do nothing right now. Everything is wrong about you. Everything is criticized. And bit by bit, the victim starts to lose their own self because they become disconnected. Their ghost and their machine become disconnected because they're not matching. And so now they're falling into, if you like, disrepair themselves.
I usually think that this is when flea and tick syndrome starts to take place because you're scrambling so hard to figure out what's happened in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of look at it like Anne Boleyn just continued to do more and more depraved things to try and get this person back. And a lot of these things that you end up doing are things that they're just writing down. Oh, and they did this. I'm going to save that for later for the custody battle. Oh, and they did this too. You're being sucked into behaving the worst of you that you can, even if it's mirroring that person who the original, that narcissist that's behaving that way, even if you're mirroring their behavior, but you're the one that's going to get punished for it. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. And for the narcissist, the ghost, by the way, drives the machine in all of us. The ghost, the narcissist ghost, is all about protecting their image. They don't want to be seen as incorrect. They don't want to be seen as ever being wrong. You'll see this all the time in our leaders and things like that. Um, and so then, if they feel that they're being shamed or they're being called out on something, the machine goes to protect the ghost. So it gets into pushing you down, that you'll never do that again. For the victim, their ghost is they're thinking, what's going on here? What's happening? I don't recognize this person anymore. I don't recognize myself anymore. What's happening? And they then, their machine jumps in to protect the ghost by their behavior. And they go then from being a strong, independent kind of person to becoming a pleaser, to plumossing the other person, fawning, anything not to trigger them into a rage. So there's a disconnect completely between the two. Am I explaining it well enough? Are you
No, you
getting it?
are. No, I get it. I get it. I don't want to interrupt because it irritates people. I've
But
learned.
it's also important if you don't understand it, then your listeners won't understand me either.
No, I totally understand it. That disconnect, I can see how far that can go and why people that have what a narcissist maybe would consider flaws, like some kind of neurodivergence,
Mhm.
that they aren't even sure about, and how that would make it even more delicious to have people that they consider disabled in their lives because they can really take advantage, really have some fun. I even asked a couple people that claim to be narcissist and certainly follows their behavior, but I asked them what's the fun in that for you? And they're like, oh, if I get someone who's autistic or I get someone who has a past history of trauma, then they're like a mouse I've put in a bathtub. I can bat them around for fun at will and they can never escape because this person struggles with having a foundation. Maybe, on that spectrum, you've got the narcissistic spectrum
Mhm.
and then that spectrum, and those two things together makes a whole lot of fun for this one and a whole lot of horror for this one. Does
Yeah.
that, does
And
that,
if you strip back, if you, do a deeper dive, really what's going on is it's all about power and control.
right?
When the narcissist is feeling powerful and in control, they're happy, um, they feel safe. And I have a lot of compassion for narcissists because I actually see that they've been victim, victimized at
Mhm.
some point along the way, probably in childhood. And they've built these 9 criteria as defense mechanisms. But that's only one way, that's only one cycle of abuse. Those 9 criteria. I'm talking about their grandiosity, their need for power and control, the need to be the center of attention, having to be special. They only want to, the reality is, they only want to be around special people. So if they have targeted you, they have seen you as special at one point. And that could be anything. It could be your looks, it could be your position in your job, it could be you're popular and they want to move in your circle. It can be anything.
It can be your brain that
Absolutely, your intellect.
your intellect is higher than theirs, which they love you for in the beginning and want you around, but they're extremely jealous, envious of.
Absolutely. But can you see that? I mean, I can understand if they are mixing with you because they think that you are the most intelligent person they have ever met. You might even be the most intelligent in the world. That means that they're intelligent too because they can move in your circle.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that they are working this out themselves, even, but that is what, when you dig deep, that's where they are feeling acceptable. They're feeling that they're up there because in the beginning, they have 2 stances. You're either superior or inferior. And when they actually target you, generally speaking, you're superior. You've got something they want, something they admire. So they go after you. You think it's a coincidence. Oh, imagine meeting you here.
Right.
It's probably not a coincidence. They probably have worked it that they know where you're going to be at a certain time, and it might be the pub or someplace casual, and they just turn up. They get a chance to buy you a drink and have a conversation with you. But they're coming in, they're getting close. But at that time, they're seeing you superior. But at some point, you're going to disappoint them, say the wrong thing, or not agree with them, or think that your relationship is so good and so you are so alike that it's okay for them to tell you something. And they take umbrage to it. And now all of a sudden, they don't like you so much. And now you're inferior.
I think
So
it's
you,
really important too for people to watch those shifts. That's when we talk about or we hear about red flags
mm,
because I had an example with someone that did exactly what you're talking about. Just love bombing, love bombing, love bombing. And on a conversation, I mentioned another male that I was going to be working with, and all of a sudden, this anger that came out of no, why did you have to tell me about that? I just met this person. But because of you and everything I've learned from you and read, I have all these tools where I was able to go, that is concerning. This person, where having not met you, I would have fallen for that kind of thing. I might have even taken it as a compliment.
uh-huh. So what do you think happened to that person in that moment?
I think that all of his insecurities about women, about his appeal, his jealousy, all of that came in, and he was letting me know that it was not welcome for me to talk about other men around him, even if they're just my friends,
Yeah,
when we weren't dating or anything.
yeah.
That was his,
I'd say you could even take it a little bit deeper, probably.
yeah,
No, I may not be right, but given the information you've given me, the possibility is that in that moment he felt rejected and abandoned by you.
there you go. Yes.
You mentioned somebody else, and you probably said it in a way that you admired that other person. Or maybe you didn't, but maybe they experienced it that way. So then it became a threat. Suddenly they weren't feeling good enough themselves, secure enough in themselves. And so you triggered them and you got a little bit of their rage. And that's kind of a normal response.
Right. If you have self-esteem, if you have what will later get blamed as your own narcissism, right?
Mhm.
But if you come in with esteem, because that's why they're attracted to you at first for these qualities, but the dismantling of it, I'd sit back and go, but that's why you wanted me in your life. And now that's the worst thing about me. But then now when you're trying to get me to help you with something else, suddenly those qualities are great again. It's just, what is happening?
Yeah. Well, they don't want you to be greater than them. And but they attract in the beginning, there's this fallacy that they're attracted to weak people. That's not true.
No, not at all.
That's a myth. They're attracted to strong people because they don't want to take care of weaklings themselves. They're attracted to strong people. And that's when they see you superior. But before long, they become jealous of you. The very thing they wanted, they become jealous and envious of. And so they start to put you down. But then they lose respect for you as well.
That's an interesting thing
Yeah.
happening when they're losing respect for you and you are also losing respect for you, but it's very different reasons. So, how does that fit into the ghost and the machine piece of it where they're going on a journey of now devaluing, they're on their program, but you're going on a journey that has some similar outcomes, but it's very different for you as the victim of this. That journey of the dismantling of self, the feeling worse about yourself because of trying to please this unpleasable person.
So what was happening to you if you're able to, I mean, this is not a therapy session, so only say what you want to say. But can you remember what was happening to you as this relationship started to suddenly take a different shift?
What was happening to me? I was what was happening was I was being just I don't know necessarily love bombed. I was being bombed with information about how great this person is from this person.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
gathering of other people that they brought into my life to also tell me what a great person this is. And so I was feeling really overwhelmed. I had just moved into a new place, which is not the best time. I was feeling in a weakened state because I was overwhelmed with what was going on in my life. So that's how they had a window in,
Okay.
which does make me afraid sometimes that in the future of having a move or any significant someone dies in your life that you love, anytime where you're going to be in that vulnerable spot, for me is a time when I have to like really have boundaries around me because I can be more susceptible to that kind of behavior.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because I think that's a really good point. We're all narcissistic to some degree. And
Exactly.
in fact, we need to be healthy. I mean, I've had to work with people who didn't have enough narcissism.
Right.
They were actually so shy, they couldn't mix, they were afraid of people. Literally, I had to work on bringing their narcissism up so they loved themselves a little bit more, that they felt more important than they had earlier, etc., etc. But so we're all narcissistic to some degree. And our narcissism can spike at times of a death, at times of stress, too many things, moving, building our business at the same time, looking after maybe a sick child or an elderly
Parent.
parent, or
Yeah.
and these add up. And actually, we can become very insecure and feel quite threatened, and we want people to mind us
Because we're stressed.
because we are our narcissism has spiked.
Mm.
And we want to be minded. We want to be taken care of. We want somebody else to take the responsibility that we carry.
Would you call that situational narcissism?
Yes,
So it's not their resting heart rate. It's just a place that gets visited during stress, which is
yes,
why leaping
yes,
to that person is a narcissist is never a good idea because you just don't know.
absolutely. They might be having a spike.
Okay.
And the difference between a pathological narcissist and our narcissism spiking is we will come back to our baseline as we settle, where the narcissist won't.
Which is why when you get away from them, the
Yes,
fleas and the ticks that you have picked up
yes,
start to go away because you're not there anymore. And then you can, that's when you start, that's really when you dive into your
yes,
own work. Oh,
yes.
what just happened to me? How did I participate? Yeah.
Yes, and I liken it to when we're with a narcissist, and it's also gradual. It builds and it builds and it builds the abuse, that our brains are hot, and we literally have to do no contact for our brain to cool down, and then we will go back to our baseline. We will come back to ourself, our real self. Because just as a narcissist has lost their true self is lost, they live out of a false self. But we, the victims, end up living out of a false self too, because we can't be ourself around them. It's not safe to be our true self, confident, capable,
The very
and
things that attracted them to you
in
in
the
the
first place,
place.
the very thing they want to take from you, which they
I
often
remember
do.
you saying, it's like they want to wear your skin. They want, you're like, you're a jacket, you're a coat. So a lot of people can get stuck in the shallowness of that or their own narcissism of that. I see that a lot in celebrity culture, the shiny,
Yeah.
the shininess of someone, and then you uncover, oh, okay, this is not good. That's all fake. All
Mhm.
of that is fake. But the journey then, I think the important journey for the victim of this is, okay, are you going to do the work to be real about what's happening to you and for you in this relationship? Or are you going to stay stuck in this fantasy where you'll be jumping through 1,000 hoops all the time? Someone will never be pleased and you will continue to be eroded. And the journey isn't impossible to survive later, but it's so much harder the longer you're in it.
And the thing is, most victims don't know that they're in it.
Right.
They can't make sense of what's happening. They know it feels bad. They don't know how they got to the place that they're in. They can't figure it out. And that's normal. And it's not until somebody can explain to you what's happening in your relationship that you can stand back and that you can actually start to see it, that you can understand it. And in my book, I talk about 3 cycles of abuse. I don't, most people, most books, there's plenty of good books out there, wonderful books out there. The reason I wrote this book, by the way, was I knew I wanted to write something, but I didn't know what. And I started to look back at the many, many emails that I get from people all around the world. And I wanted to see what was the now that I wasn't I actually retired from working with clients in December, just gone. But I took a little time out. I was winding down my business. So then I had time to think about things like what would I like to write about? And the 2 things that kept coming up constantly, whether it was emails to me or whether it was the clients coming in the door to me, the 2 questions that came up all the time was, is my partner a narcissist? And 2, should I stay or should I leave? They were the 2. And I thought, okay, I wonder, could I write a book that might address that? That they get all the information in one place,
Right.
sort of idea. And that was what I set out to do, really. So I started to gather my thoughts together and all of the learnings I've got from my clients. I've learned from my clients as I've gone along, to be honest with you, like most therapists do. And I'm aware that there's great books out there that could deal with these 2 questions. So I wanted to write something slightly different. What's the point of reinventing the wheel? I wanted to go and maybe take a look from a different angle. So what I decided was, well, most of the books, including the ones I've written as well, deal with the behaviors of the narcissist and sometimes the victim as well. And I thought, well, okay, but what about their minds? What's going on in their minds? And that's triggered that metaphor, the ghost in the machine, that 35 years ago I had learned about in philosophy. So that's what I said, right, we'll take a deep dive, but I'm not happy to just look at the narcissist. That's not fair.
Right.
Why should they get all the blame? Why
Right.
should they get all the power? So I decided, right, I will look into the mind and the behavior of both the narcissist and the victim. And the first thought that came to mind will be, well, people will think I'm shaming the victim, blaming them. And that's not what I'm about at all. I don't even want to blame and shame the narcissist either, because I think they're victims too.
Right.
So I decided, so at first I thought, oh gosh, that's tricky, you know, it's full of landmines walking that road. But I decided, no, I'll take the hard road. I'll have a go, see can I do it. And so that was what I started to do, to look at both. And I hope for anyone who's listening or anyone who is finding themselves in this situation that they will know that I'm trying to empower. I'd love to empower the narcissists as well, but most of them have no interest in that. Their life works for them the way it is. Some people, some narcissists are willing to look at their life realizing, no, I'm not getting the fulfillment out of my life that other people seem to be getting, and they're willing to do some work. But the majority, they're happy in their power and their glory. So that's how the book, I'm not quite sure what I was answering there, but that's how the book was born anyway.
Well, what I love about this book and listeners and viewers, what we're going to do is there's so much in this book that I want to do a chapter at a time, but we're going to condense that. It's 25 chapters, and I kid you not, we could do an hour on each chapter and really dive into it. But we are going to do more shows and take those chapters into mind, but we'll probably do some combinations in there. So this is just an overview of what we've got. But I have to tell you first, where can they buy the book, Christine? Because you don't have it on Amazon for good reason. But
No, I
where can
don't.
you?
The only place that it's a PDF ebook. The only place it can be bought, it's not a hard copy. I'll explain that if you want me to explain why, because a lot of people think it should be a hard copy.
Or they want an
Um,
book, that kind of a thing.
yeah, but it can only be got on my website. That's the only place you can get it, which is narcissisticbehavior.net. And if you go on there, you'll see a link to my book. To all my books are all on there. I did have my first book was a hard copy book, and it was being sold on Amazon, and they were doing a great job. They were doing a good job. They were sending it out to people and that sort of thing. But two people hijacked my book and they were selling it for mad money. And I mean mad money.
Like one of them was like $120 for the book I saw at one point, and I'm like, what?
More, even more. My books, all my books are $15.95. $15.95. That's the price of each of my books. And they were selling that book for, it went way beyond what you're talking about.
Wow.
And it was somebody I wouldn't have known because I'm not very technologically minded at all. I trust. So, but somebody got in touch with me and said, I really feel I need your book. My therapist told me I need your book, and I can't afford X amount, whatever it was. It was more than 150.
Yeah.
And that was when how it came to my attention. But when I did research, I found that two people had hijacked it, were selling it for bad money, different amounts. When I got in touch with Amazon, thinking, well, I'm their client, they'll respond in some way, but they didn't. They said that that was allowed. And the only thing they suggested was that I match their price. And I thought, that's it. And to me, that was immoral. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to allow people who think they're following me to get ripped off in that manner. And since then, I haven't written a physical book. And
So
this way, I'm able to control how it's sold and what price it's sold.
exactly. And, as we all are thinking about moving away from, it was the big box stores. We need to move away from that and, shop locally at your local bookstore, whatever. Well, now,
Yeah.
everything's online. Amazon is the big box store of online, and we need to shop locally. This is an example of shopping locally. Go locally to her website narcissisticbehavior.net, and you can buy the book there. I'm going to try to convince Christine to do an audiobook, but we'll see down the road because hearing you read it would be fantastic.
Oh gosh, okay. Well,
But
I'll think about that.
but here, what's interesting, listeners and viewers, is the book goes through um, each chapter, but it gives you an overview, like we see now with AI, where you go into Google and you type something in and it gives you a little summary of what's going on. Well, Christine has done that of each chapter, which is brilliant because you get the bite-sized piece that you may need for immediate, okay, that's what this chapter is about. And then you can take your deep dive later. I love the way that you did this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Um, I try, maybe not in every chapter, I can't remember. Um, when I know this sounds odd, but when I write a book, I let it go. It's gone.
Yeah, you give birth to
Uh,
it. It's how I feel about shows. Don't.
it's like the book comes through me
Yep.
and I let it go. However, um, I've tried in most of the chapters to give a summary of the how the ghost in the machine would be for both the narcissist and the victim. Where I could, I did. So that you start to see their behavior and your own behavior. And you know, the difference is the narcissist is trying to survive. They're trying to stay safe. They do not feel safe when you challenge them, when you see a flaw in them, because in their mind, in their full self, they've got to be perfect. It's an awful way to be. It's a
Right.
terrible way to be. But so they're trying to protect themselves, and their behaviors are coming out of that protection to keep their ghost safe. It's the same for the victim. The victim are trying to make sense of what's going on in this madness, and they're not doing a great job because it's very hard to figure out what's going on when there's different kinds of abuses going on all at the same time. And I know that that was the point I was trying to make earlier and I lost sight of, that we're not just dealing with the 9 criteria for diagnosing a narcissist. They're their defense mechanisms operating. But then there's also 2 other major cycles of abuse, which I go into in quite depth in the book, which are also operating, and they're all operating more or less at the same time. So it's not that you're going through one at a time. They're like layers of abuse going on at the same time. No wonder we can't figure it out. It's taken me years to figure it out myself.
And I wonder if we can make some correlations, and we can go into other shows to expand on it. But
Yeah.
if you can look at what's happening in the world at large right
Hmm.
now, I would say that this kind of abuse has always gone on. It's
Yes.
always gone on.
Yes.
It's because of our ability to access information. It's louder, it's faster, it's
Absolutely.
everywhere. So, what's
Mm.
great about a book like this is you can take this and not only look at it with how it's affecting you personally, if you're in one of these relationships with a neighbor, with a friend, with a spouse, with a family member, whatever, or with many.
Mhm.
And then you could also project it out into the world, the larger world, and go, who else in my life? Maybe it's a leader of a country,
Mhm.
maybe it's a leader of a state or a village or whatever. How is their behavior mirroring what you're seeing in this book? And are they on the narcissistic toxic side, or are they on the victim but also toxic side? Where do they fit on this spectrum? I love how
Yeah.
you talk about it being a spectrum as well, but I like the
Yes.
fact that you can take this and easily apply it to things further out to see, oh, where are we as a country, as a people, as a whatever, where are we on our journey of narcissistic abuse recovery?
Absolutely. And you know, We start with ourselves. We can then look at our family. We can then look at our community, and then we can look at our world and our world leaders. And, to be fair, even to those leaders, they're getting rewarded by society for acting the way they do,
Yes.
which actually makes them even more grandiose. It's like turning up their volume of their behaviors. And then we're outraged that they behave like that. But we also have a responsibility that we encourage their behavior. And I'm not only talking about leaders, I'm bringing it back to the workplace. Very often it is the narcissists within the company that actually get the promotions. And they certainly don't do the hardest work because they're very good at delegating for other people to actually do the work. But if there's trouble in a company, and I worked 23 years within the company, in the corporate world, literally all of the time. I mean, I wasn't only called in, I actually supervised the staff. I heard all the complaints. I dealt with all of the conflicts. So because I met so many of the staff, one person might come in and complain about you, and I think, well, I don't know, it could be just a personality clash between them. I'll have to sit down with Kristin and see how she finds this person. But then I got 5 people that work for you, and they don't know, they're in private in therapy with me, and they're telling me confidential stuff. They're not telling each other. They're not talking to each other about what they're telling me. They definitely don't want to be doing that. And then I find I get the position where I can see clearly where everybody's positioned, who the real victims are here,
Which is
who's the
so,
antagonistic one.
oh, it's so hard to figure that
So
out.
yeah,
It's brilliant that that you're able to do
yeah,
that kind of work because yeah, in the beginning, and that's where I think a lot of us can get tripped up when we're just coming out of this or we've just heard about this kind of abuse and we're still so green, but I see that stage with victims of this as that's when they want to go hang a shingle and help people with recovery. And let me tell you, that is not what you should be doing because you jump to conclusions. You haven't gone far enough on your healing journey.
yeah,
I did that. I would jump to conclusions about someone because I wasn't far enough down the road, in my healing to
yeah,
do the work you're talking about, where you really
mhm,
investigate who is at the center of this and why.
yeah. And it's not even about really judging. It's about listening. It's about figuring out, being good at solving problems, perhaps would be useful, and just watching it, listening to it, and seeing where the real problem lies. But unfortunately, HR companies do not want to deal with this kind of personality. They're frightened of them. And I've seen so many good staff leave. They had to leave. Their mental health in the end was taking its toll. That even I was feeling it's better for them to leave. Because every day they walk up those stairs into that office, they're re traumatized daily, just walking in the door. And so the narcissist ends up staying. I was in one office where there were 7 staff, and one by one, all left apart from the narcissist. I raised the flag to the boards. I told them there was a problem. And I said, if you wasn't dealt with within a certain amount, I even gave them a time frame. I was expecting it would blow up automatically. It was a landmine waiting to go off. And they did nothing. And true to form, within that time frame, just as I had predicted, the whole thing blew up and all of the staff left, apart from the narcissist themselves. And they kept that person there. They never got rid of it. They brought in new people, but they never promoted her, which I thought they got it. But they were too afraid that she would, of litigation, that she would take them to court. And she would have done. And that's what they're afraid of. I've known some people have bought them out. And I mean, it cost them 100,000 or plus to buy them out, give them a year's salary plus. And in that, but they did it in nobody would, they were gagged. They couldn't talk about the staff member after they'd gone. They got a great golden handshake, but they got rid of them that way. But that was cheaper than actually going to court for them and
Yeah,
doing justice for everybody.
yeah, you have to think
So
about
it's a hard situation. It really is a hard because they are serial litigators. They don't care about going to court. They love the drama. They're not afraid of court. Whether they're a husband or wife fighting over the children, whether it's a staff member fighting the company, whether it's a leader fighting the government, they don't care. They love the drama.
absolutely. They'd make great gossip columnists.
Probably.
There's one out there. I don't know if I should promote him or not by saying his name, but anyway, he's the queen of all media, and he's so charming, so charming.
Oh, they're very charming.
Admits what he is, and he
Yeah,
is great at Hollywood gossip. He
yeah.
gets it. He gets it right down. Oh, this is what's happening because he's just as devious as a lot of these people are. But what I notice right now, and I wonder if you notice this, if it's something I notice being in the United States or if this is, in other countries too, is it feels like we have been operating in this old system and this old way of being and for a long time where narcissism really could thrive and was even lauded. Oh, that's the strength, that's the power. Ooh, let's all to that. What I'm seeing, and it felt like as soon as we stepped into 2025, that suddenly that isn't what people are like. There's a few hangers on, there's some hangers on still clapping about it, but it's starting to lay that kind of behavior is starting to not be viewed with the claps, with the excitement, it's almost like we've pierced through several veils and are
Yes.
closer to the ugly truth about these things. Do you feel that too, or is that
I
just
think that it's such, from the time I began working with victims to now is very, very different. I actually have people for the last few years, they're coming to me and they're using the term, I think my partner might be a narcissist. So they've actually researched, they found the term, they've looked it up. The internet has helped people educate themselves. People are much more educated around that whole thing of personality disorder than they even realize
right?
themselves. So yeah, there's a bigger awareness. Um, it's still not out completely
Right,
of the closet, but certainly the door is open of the closet that and I think we swung so far with our reality shows and things like that that were exciting. They were, I mean, I like reality shows. I love to look at the behaviors. Um, I find it interesting from that angle. But we've come to is, even when you look at the way people are having surgeries and things like that, that's becoming the norm. People with thin lips like mine now are, there's something wrong with your thin, what's wrong with you? Get your lips done.
right,
So the abnormal is becoming the normal. But people are now starting to question, do we really want that?
right.
They're getting a bit fed up with the reality shows. They're seeing them as being very dysfunctional now, where before they were more exciting than dysfunctional.
And I see people, I mean, when I was doing television spots and things like that, you were given very clear instructions on how to look on camera, which ear you could have an earbud in, what kind of makeup, all this stuff. And it's so funny now. It's like anybody in a sweatshirt with their hair a mess and no makeup or whatever comes on, and it's about what's coming out your mouth, and it's also about the energy that you bring to that, more than it is about how you look. Of course, there's this people that have to make their remarks, but the majority of, when I look at like someone who has 300,000 followers, let's say on YouTube,
Yeah.
generally this person is just driving their car and they're making a mental note that they make public. They're not looking at what their camera angle is. The ones that are the ones that people are getting irritated with and going to the ones that don't care about that stuff. That's a nice, I don't know,
Yeah,
a
well,
nice
we're
happenstance.
beginning to wake up. Um, maybe this appealed to our narcissism to have these reality shows.
Right.
It gave us a chance to see uh, other people doing the things we'd love to say and do, but wouldn't dare. I don't know. But we're getting a bit tired of it now. We're seeing, how fake it is. We want more genuineness in our lives, more wholesomeness in our lives, maybe. But definitely, culture is breaking down in a way that is very quick, very fast. But, companies are changing, the culture of countries are changing, and it's all changing so fast, too fast, that actually we're wanting to put the brakes on now. And I'm talking about your average man in the street.
Right.
We want to slow things down. It's all moved far too fast in the last 20 years. We don't know who we are anymore.
I would say with your book, all of your books, and this one especially, and what we're going to continue to talk about as we close this session, is it's wonderful to have these tools. They are only helpful. And there's so much of an incredible journey for both sides of this, the narcissist and, the person that's the
Yes.
victim of this behavior. There are gems in this journey. It's just when you're in that much pain, you can't see that far out. When I first met you, I don't even know how many years ago that was,
10 years.
10 years or so ago. I am so grateful, and what an arc. And it was not, oh, good, I read Christine's first book and now I have all this information. I will never run into this person again. I will never let them in my life. Whoa, problem solved. That is not the journey, is it?
No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. And all the knowledge I have, I can still be caught. The only thing I would say is I can spot it quicker. And once I do spot it, I can then move away from it. But I can still get hooked. We all can. We all can.
And the thing that you can get hooked on really in this is who you are, not looking at the parts of you that your narcissism, your own narcissism needs to be worked on, but the opportunity for healing and growth and a spiritual journey. Oh my gosh, it's incredible.
Absolutely.
If you do this,
Mm.
even, but it takes a long time. It's taken me 10 years to get to the point where I can go back and look at myself in situations and try to perceive that situation from the narcissist viewpoint, from someone else's viewpoint, and things that are not complementary to me at all if I choose to look at them that way and be really objective. And what was great about, I would never been able to do that 10 years ago. No way. You're way too hot. You're inflamed inside and out. It's not going to happen. But the benefit of doing that later is knowing yourself more. Oh, okay, I could see where I perceived that situation and why. And on other things that you can put upon yourself, you can reject. You have the ability to go, that's not me. I perceived that way, but that is not what happened. I reject that. So
Yeah.
it can be such a confidence booster.
Yes, the beauty of it actually is that in a way, um, the narcissist is a gift to us.
Yes.
And we are a gift to the narcissist if they choose to take us as a gift as well, in that the narcissist shows up our shadow side. And we, of course, show up their shadow side if they're willing to look at that, which most of them won't be, but some will. And that is the beauty. They shine the light on our shadow side that we didn't even know we had. And we can work on that. And that's what's empowering. It's not about shaming or blaming ourselves. It's about having compassion and saying, well, I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that my pleasing behavior. I mean, I've been a pleaser all my life, but I grew up with a psychopathic brother. And that was how I had no idea, but that was how I controlled him, by pleasing, by keeping him all right, by minding his emotions. If I kept him okay, I'd be okay. I didn't know I was manipulating by being pleasing. I didn't know, but my survival instincts knew. And so I'm grateful to my survival instinct. But I can also see how pleasing I carry that into so many of my relationships, all my relationships, at home, in the workplace, everywhere. And so the narcissist, eventually, when I got to look at myself, I have to be grateful for those experiences that woke me up to my own shadow side that was actually getting me in trouble.
Mm.
So it's about compassion. It's not about blaming or shaming. And it's about taking our power back because we can't change them. We can't change anyone else, but we can always change ourselves. And that's a message of hope that I give to everybody.
Thank you, Christine. Everyone, this is Christine Louis de Canonville. She's in Ireland. Go to narcissisticbehavior.net. There is a plethora of information there, and that's where you can buy her latest book, The Ghost and the Machine. And this is just episode number 1. We will be doing more of these, and each week you will watch me, or each month, however often we do these, you will watch me try to convince Christine to make this an audiobook.
Well, maybe you'd read it for me.
I could do that, but they want to hear you. We'd have to do it where I bring in like a quote that you state just so people can hear your voice. Mine's like, whatever, instead of who needs to hear another American say anything? But we will talk further about that. Christine, mwah, thank you so much.
Can I end on my cat has just walked into the room
Yes.
and he's rubbing up against me and he's purring and my affection is going back to him. I gave him a little look and he knew I'd acknowledged him. That was our ghost in the machine, right? The ghost was my cat coming in and rubbing against me, giving me a gift. He's purring, so I know he's happy. And my machine gave back a little affection and a look to him, which he knows. So the ghost in the machine is operating all the time in all of us. And it can be positive. It doesn't have to be negative. So I hope that it'll give you another angle to look at narcissism.
And on that,
Okay.
we'll be back for the next
I
one.
look forward to speaking to everybody soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.